Houston, Dynamo, Portland Timbers, Sporting Kansas, Los Angeles Galaxy,
Beach Pass.
Toronto FC, Salt Lake, Chicago Fire, Columbus Crew, FC Dallas, New York Red Bulls.
Pitch Pass, your all-access credential to the people that matter in MLS. Here's your host, Greg Roach.
Oh, it's exciting times if you are an MLS fan, as I know you are, because you downloaded this podcast. Thank you very much for doing that. We appreciate it. Pitchpass.com if you want to go to the website, get more information on the show. Yes, the usual, spread the word, iTunes, leave comments, the whole 9 yards. Thank you for everything. If you didn't listen to last week's episode with Taylor Twellman, please go back and do that. Jay Demerit of Vancouver Whitecaps also on the show. A lot of stuff that we touched on still applies as we head into the final weekend of MLS regular season action. And to get us in the mood, we will talk to Will Johnson, midfielder of Portland Timbers, a little bit later on in the show. But first, we had Taylor Twellman of ESPN last week. Let's bring in his cohort at ESPN. The great Alexi Lalas joins us right now. Alexi, I hope you're doing better than me. How are you, sir?
I don't know. It depends how well you're doing. I don't know.
Well, I got two reasons that I'm not feeling great right now. Number one is my beloved Ajax. That was kind of the death knell today in Champions League. We're recording this on Tuesday, October 22nd. They dropped all 3 points to Celtic. Even though it was on the road, I don't think that's going to be enough to get them through the next round.
Well, I mean, they are about the future anyway. I mean, why are you living in the present? This is all about future and creating stars of tomorrow. So you have to, at some point, I think, if you're an Ajax fan, you have to come to that realization and accept that, and in a certain way, maybe even revel in that you are creating the future stars for the world to enjoy.
Yeah, it is great in 5 years to always be able to say, hey, you see those 11 players scattered across the continent of Europe? They all played for Ajax at one time 5 years ago. They would have been awesome if they were still together, but they're not.
Yeah, what are you going to do? I mean, that only lasts you so long, I suppose. At some point, you kind of want to be that super club and be that team that buys all those. But they've made their bed. That's who they are.
It's true. And then part two is this is the 23rd anniversary of Pearl Jam's first gig. They're playing tonight in my hometown of Philadelphia. And instead of being there, Alexi, I'm choosing to talk to you.
Oh man, wow.
Yeah,
that's rough. I cannot even come close to giving you at least the thrill that a Pearl Jam reunion can give. So I'm not even going to try.
Well, let me ask you this: you're a '90s rocker. Pearl Jam's place in rock history, where would you put them at?
In the overall, or just in the decade? I mean, because in the decade, it's obviously Pearl Jam and Nirvana. But what they meant to the shift of from hair metal and that type of stuff that I'm still and will always defend, but I mean to the complete depth of that, and to change the way that we consumed music and watched music and thought of music, or rock music at least, they will always be responsible for that. So I don't think that they're going anywhere in terms of their importance of changing the styles and the genre at that moment.
And I agree with you completely about the hair. I love revisiting hair, but I think that you're right. Even though there were bands like Nine Inch Nails and Jane's Addiction that were bringing depth to rock music, at the time, mainstream rock was all hair. So that's where I really credit those grunge bands for doing, is bringing depth to mainstream rock.
And you count that you see that as good.
I see that as a good thing. I don't see why we needed to sweep out all the fun that we needed to sweep out in the early 90s when we brought the depth in. I'm just glad the depth was there. Would have been nice to offset that a little bit with some fun.
Yeah, I know. The fun probably should have remained, but it probably it had to happen. It was probably the natural course of events. But I still will argue that if you look at the pure musicianship that a lot of the hair bands and stuff, it's not just as good. In many cases, it's much better than anything that came out in the 90s. But music isn't just about musicianship. It's also touching people in the way that, whether it's a Pearl Jam or a Nirvana, touch people at the right moment. It's also about timing. You got to take your hat off to them.
Alexi, I am a rock radio DJ. You should definitely have your own show. You have the chops to do a show.
Oh, listen, I will argue that a Warren DeMartini is 10 times the guitar player that Kurt ever was, or anything like that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that the masses are going to like him. And God, the timing of it was absolutely perfect because it had gotten bloated. It just the 80s metal scene, and I was a huge part of it, and like I said, still champion it. But it had gotten bloated, and it was ripe for something to come along completely different. And the way they did it was pretty awesome and memorable because we still talk about it today, as you can attest to, being that you're so distraught about the fact that you have to talk to me as opposed to being at the Pearl Jam concert.
Now, here's the last music question I'll ask you. Then we'll get to MLS playoff stuff. We're talking 80s hair. My 80s hair band that I always throw out, because you had your upper tier as far as popularity is concerned. Then you had another level, which I thought were great bands that just didn't get to the level of, say, a Motley Crue or a Poison. That was always Cinderella for me. What was your favorite, maybe not first tier, but second tier hair band that you would always say, you want to talk musicianship, make sure you check out that band?
All right. Well, anybody that knows me knows that I am forever and will forever be a fan of Rat. I think it's the greatest rock band. It's my favorite band. So I'm going to take that out of the equation. I could go on for hours and talk about Rat. But then you mentioned Cinderella and those types of bands. Cinderella actually is an interesting case because of the blues influence that came out of Cinderella. They came out of Philly and they came on the heels of Bon Jovi. He actually brought them up, but their blues-based influence was really interesting. Gave them much more credibility. And Tom Kiefer had the hair, but I actually looked at them as almost being in a more traditional rock band sense that were kind of lumped in with the hair metal. But they had their ballads and stuff like that. But there was a whole lot of musicianship that went along with Cinderella. The Skid Rows and stuff like that. I'll tell you right now, who was a great songwriter and a great performer was Jamie Lane from Warren.
Oh, yeah.
And he rest in peace. He passed away a couple of years ago, but the stuff that he wrote was, as a lot of these musicians were, it was obliterated because of the spandex and the hair and the aesthetic of it, and people didn't see how great some of these songs were. So I will defend it to my dying days.
We've made our case. You need to go to however you get your music and revisit those 80s bands. Alexi, we got to talk a little MLS playoffs, though, as we head into the last weekend of the regular season. So many questions still up for grabs. I'm not even going to bring up MLS Snob to you because I know that you are, and I know that you love this parody. So let's just get right into, first, look back at last weekend. I'll give you three teams. Who came up the smallest in a big spot? Dynamo, Whitecaps, or the Union?
Well, I don't think the Union was ever really that good, so it's not surprising and therefore not necessarily disappointing to me or even the majority of people. Vancouver, the same thing. I think Houston laying an egg at home, given what Houston has been at home and their ability to figure out a way to have that end-of-season turnaround. And they could still figure it out and have that playoff kind of switch that they turn on, but that was a moment when we've all expected Houston to do something. And not just to lose, but to lose 3-0. And to be fair, I mean, absolutely every bounce went New York's way. On the opposite side of it, New York, credit to them because they came in and they got a result there that puts them within shot now of winning the championship this week, or winning the Supporters' Shield this weekend. So I would have to say Houston probably because how great they have been at home, and most importantly, this history of being really, really good down the stretch.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. There's a fourth team that I'll bring up to you in a second, but does the Red Bull victory, because we talked to Taylor Twellman last week on the show, and my whole thing has always been, well, Houston's got a switch and they're just waiting to throw it on. But that last weekend made me very, very concerned if I was a Dynamo fan that maybe they don't have that switch this year to throw on. Was that victory or that result, did that say more about the concern about Houston or the solid case that New York has as maybe the number one contender in the league for MLS Cup?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably make a case on either side, and therefore, probably when it comes down to it, it's that proverbial combination of both. Houston isn't as strong as they've been in the past. That switch that we all talk about is wonderful, and they've been, they've lived and died by it, and they've been able to go to it and switch it. But we all know in sports that that's a dangerous game to play because when it's not there, you still think it's there, and when you go to switch it, it doesn't happen in the same way, and it will bite you at the worst possible time. I don't think that Houston is as good as they have been in the past. I think they lack some of that. Even some of that grit and the ability to fight through, which is part of what came when they flicked that switch. They don't have that right now. but New York, I tell you what, I think that this New York team right now believes that it's a destiny type of thing. I think Tim Cahill has actually become the leader of that group, certainly on the field. I'm not in the locker room, so I don't know what's happening in the locker room. And all under Mike Pecky, who I'll be the first to raise my hand and say I wasn't sure he was even going to make it through the year, but he has found a way to use that emotion and that passion that he has, and maybe an understanding that he doesn't necessarily have all the X's and O's, and to do what he's good at. And he's done it time and time again, and more credit to him, because it's not easy. Yeah, every coach wants to have the tools that he has, but it's still, you got to be able to manage a lot of egos and a lot of different stuff going on when you're the coach of New York.
And what I love about Cahill's emergence this season for Red Bulls is that, and I'm guilty of this probably more than anybody else, is keep looking towards Thierry Henry to go, why aren't you a better leader with the young players? Why is your body language so bad on the pitch? And now that Cahill's kind of stepped up and said, I'm the vocal leader, I'm the driving force, at least on the pitch of this club, you don't really have to worry or think about what Thierry Henry's doing up the field, because you're confident that there's another guy who's got just as much gravity or leverage in the situation as far as experience is concerned, that is taking the reins and is kind of driving the bus.
Yeah, and we talk about dynamics all the time, both on and off the field. And when you have Thierry Henry there, everybody's going to be subservient to him. The money and the prestige and who he is and his name, and to be quite honest, his character and his personality. I mean, he's got a huge ego. It's something that I love about him. There's a beautiful arrogance about it, but it can rub you the wrong way. But when Tim Cahill comes in, who's been through some of the same things that he has been, and certainly has a extra level of respect because of his EPL experience, and then you see Tim Cahill turn it around and change the way he goes about his business and continually and consistently provide not just goals, but clearing balls out of the box, defending, getting into tackles. Then it makes Thierry Henry, when he does act, petulant, look that much worse. I'm not sure Thierry cares or anything like that, but maybe having that alongside him helps Thierry Henry. Now, he's going to still roll his eyes, and he's going to do the things that at times drive me and others crazy, but also Thierry Henry is going to provide you those moments of brilliance. And I would pay money to see Thierry Henry play, not just because of those moments, but the whole package, the theater of it, his personality, all the good, bad, and at times ugly that comes with it.
I didn't mention Sounders when I gave you the three choices who came up smallest. I mean, look, at the end of the day, they came up the smallest of the four teams, but they still backed into a playoff spot. That's why I didn't include them. But not a good feeling going into the playoffs. And we were just talking about Tim Cahill. Is Tim Cahill last season a positive harbinger of things to come, or at least something that Sounders fans can take solace in when looking at Clint Dempsey going into 2014?
Well, first off, if you're talking about the elite teams in MLS, and the elite teams are the ones that spend the most money and position themselves as the super clubs of the league, and you're talking about Los Angeles, you're talking about Seattle, and to a certain extent New York, making the playoffs isn't an accomplishment. That should be an expectation given the talent and the money and the resources that are put into these teams. When it comes to a player like Clint Dempsey coming at midseason, look, I got experience with the turmoil that can throw an organization into, having been through the Beckham situation. You got to adjust from a tactical perspective. You have to adjust from a dynamics perspective off the field. All these different things make it difficult. So you almost have to assess these players after, especially when they come mid-season. You almost have to give them that season. I almost get the feeling that Ziggy Schmidt, if he really had his way, he would, and basically when they shut down a pitcher, he would just shut down Clint Dempsey and say, all right, look, we're going to go to the off-season, and then we're going to build it all for next year, and that's where we'll really start using you. But coming in the middle and having to force him into situations, because Clint is a very particular type of player, it hasn't worked out, and it's not looking good right now, and they are certainly backing into the playoffs. Doesn't mean that they can't figure out a way to play better, but it's not good if you're a Seattle owner. It's not good if you're a Seattle fan, because the expectations have been raised. And if Seattle were to bomb out of the first round of the playoffs, that would not be good for Ziggy Schmidt or for the entire organization. You
just said it, and you've been through this with the Beckham situation. It's kind of very similar if you think about it, right down to the fact of the injury. Clint got his after he got in the league, but still get in the league, before you get your legs under you, you're injured. Now it's a situation where you're putting the coach in a situation of everybody wants to see this guy on the field, front office, teammates, obviously the team, the fans, the media, everyone wants to see this guy on the field. So you're rushing him on the field, which then gets him even more behind the eight ball because now he's even more injured. But there's no way around this, though. Is there, Alexi?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about shutting it down. That's just theoretical. You can't do it.
You can't do it.
You just can't do it from a business perspective. People want to see the guy that you're paying millions of dollars for, and the person that's making those $1 million, whether it's Clint or a Thierry Henry or a David Beckham, they understand and they feel a responsibility. And it's even more so in MLS because you don't have a collection of 10 guys around him that are also making millions of dollars. That is the man, and that's where all the focus is. And there's almost a curiosity factor that, especially over here in the U.S., where when you have these types of players, and Clint even more so because he's an American curiosity, and what's he going to be, and how is it going to affect him with the national team? And he puts probably as much pressure on himself as we do from the outside, and you want to try to give back and live up to those expectations and live up to the money. And it's almost impossible given the short amount of time that he's been involved with the club. But this is the gig, and you signed the papers, and you knew what the pressure that was coming, and you got to figure out a way to do it. And Clint playing through injury and doing all that kind of stuff, I think it's just a reflection of him wanting to live up to what maybe at this point will be impossible to live up to.
And you've alluded to the answer to my next question twice already, and that question would be, why is there a designated player adjustment period? You mentioned tactics, you mentioned dynamics, and then in your last answer, something kind of stuck out to me because I thought to myself, well, if I have a winter transfer, if I'm in Europe, they have to be integrated just like they do here in MLS, but tell me if I'm wrong, you're intimating a little bit that maybe part of the problem or the difference is you're not integrating a $5 million a year player amongst other $5 million a year players. And that's probably the difference between integrating a DP player into MLS and a European transfer in the winter transfer period.
Absolutely. I mean, and there's a bunch of different things that are unique in terms of the integration of a player into MLS. It's the culture. It's a brand new culture. For some players, it's a new language. Playing on turf, the travel, the difference in temperatures, all of those different things that we talk about. And then the fact that you are the man in terms of the money and in terms of the perception out there. And if you were to transfer to a different place within Europe, yeah, there would be some attention, but you'd also be surrounded by a bunch of other millionaires that are under pressure, maybe not to the extent that you are, but it does mitigate it a little bit. So these guys that come over, as I said before, I don't feel sorry for them. This is the reality, and by the way, you should do your homework and understand what the reality of the situation is going to be when they get here, and if they're going to sign for a lot of money, there are expectations. But soccer, I can't speak to too many other sports, but soccer in particular, if you put Lionel Messi on a horrible team, it's not as if he's going to change the team. You've got to have other people around you that not only are at your level from a soccer perspective, but almost also are somewhere around your level from just an existence perspective, if you can understand, because the disparity between a David Beckham walking into a locker room and a first-year player in terms of how they view themselves, how other people view them, and then the actual part of the money is sometimes difficult to overcome. It takes a long time to figure it out.
If I'm a coach of Barcelona, I can afford to give Neymar 4, 5, 6 matches to have little brief periods of introduction. If I'm the coach of Seattle, I can't afford to do that if I have Clint Dempsey.
Well, look at Bale. Yes, everybody wants to see him, and yes, there's this incredible money that was paid for him, but they can afford, from a competitive standpoint, not to necessarily have him play or not to necessarily have him start every single game. And I think from his perspective, yes, there's pressure coming in with the price tag, but it would be completely different if he was coming in and he wasn't surrounded by some incredibly good players that are making a tremendous amount of money into a club that is accustomed to winning. So there is a little bit of a cushion.
I want to get your brief thoughts before we start to wrap up on the report that Steve Goff of Washington Post floated out on Twitter today, and that is Jermaine Jones having his people reach out to MLS about possibly coming and playing and wanting to play in Los Angeles Galaxy. My first reaction to that was, is I understand placing Clint Dempsey where Clint Dempsey wants to go. Is the league at the point where it can say to Jermaine Jones, we'd love to have you in the league. You are 100% an asset, a U.S. men's national team starter, but you know what? You're going to have to go through the same process to be allocated like everybody else. I don't know if you get the treatment to decide where you're going to go. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think that there are different levels in terms of the treatment that players get, and Clint Dempsey was and continues to be at a different level when it comes to the QFAC or whatever you want to call it, the recognition of who Clint Dempsey is and how he's going to impact the league. With all due respect to Jermaine Jones, there are the diehards and the people that understand soccer that are immersed in it, but nobody's buying tickets to see Jermaine Jones play.
Exactly.
Nobody's going gaga to have an interview with him. He's plied his trade for years overseas, and so that he wants to come to L.A. It's not surprising. Every player wants to come to MLS says, I want to go to New York, I want to go to L.A., but it's not as simple as that. And then there's the actual practical part of it. Does he make L.A. better? There's a lot of people that believe Jermaine Jones is a certain type of player that is good for a certain type of team, and maybe LA is not necessarily the right one. So, yeah, I don't see the league moving mountains or bending things to accommodate Jermaine Jones, although I think he'd be a great addition to the league, and it would be fun to see where he ended up, because I think he could make a team better. But this is not Clint Dempsey coming back. I'd
like to be in the room the day that Don Garber says, love to have you, Jermaine. Definitely can accommodate you. Los Angeles, beautiful city. Have you heard of Chivas USA?
Well, that couldn't hurt Chivas.
All right, so one guy I want to touch on before we get to the weekend games, and that would be Schellas Hyman. He announced last week that he would step down as the coach of FC Dallas at the end of the year. Kind of went out of his way to say that I'm not retiring. Do you think this is it for Schellas Hyman, and what do you think his legacy will be for FC Dallas?
Well, I think it will overall be positive in that he was at the helm for a positive period where not only the full team but the youth system and I think the general perception of FC Dallas, not just in the area but around, was that this was a team that had some great individuals, whether it's David Ferreira, those types of players, or collectively getting to MLS Cups. That was quality in MLS. Now, the epic collapse that they have had this year is on his watch and certainly probably hastened this decision, as it should. I mean, it's inexcusable for a team that started out so well not to be able to finish it, and you gotta look to the people that are leading the ship. But I think that Schellas will remain in soccer. As he should, because I think he's important. I always enjoyed my conversations with him because I learned something. He's got a history, he's got a perspective, but he also understands the gig, and it hasn't gone well this year. But I don't think that it should in any way tarnish the overall good. I think the organization is in a better position than when he took it over, and as a caretaker. I think that's a good position to be in.
Would you want to see him, and I know the answer to this question is probably yes, but would you want to see him coaching in MLS in 2014? Or should I say, do you see him coaching in MLS in 2014?
I'd actually rather see him in a front office position, much more of a, and not because he's elder, but I'm just going to use the elder statesman type of phrase, because I think I would like to see him not on the sidelines. I would like to see him looking much more in terms of big picture, technical director type of role, because I think he's smart. I think he sees how the league and how the teams could grow. But no, I don't necessarily. I'm not excited about seeing him coaching another MLS team. I don't think that's. And I don't necessarily think that that's going to happen, but I'm excited about seeing him be involved in MLS in some way.
ESPN bringing the curtain down on this year's MLS regular season, Los Angeles at Seattle. Will you be in Seattle, Alexi?
Oh, yes. I'm heading up there to get rained on, probably. That's usually the way it works up there. And, since San Jose wasn't able to figure out a way to beat Los Angeles, Seattle, as we know, backed into the playoffs. But now everybody's jockeying for position to try to figure out, they want to avoid this one-off play-in game that they're having, and so everybody's kind of figuring out where they're going to end up. So Seattle needs to win.
Yes.
They need to get 3 points here to at least assure themselves that they're not going to play that game. So it's going to be fun either way. Landon Donovan still is stuck on 134 goals. If you were to do it in front of the Seattle faithful, it'd be interesting to see how they would react to what I would argue is the best American player ever to play the game, to become the new leader in goal scoring when it comes to MLS, and to do it up there. That would be interesting to see what type, because we've heard about this organic response and the incredible passions they have. Well, would it apply to a Landon Donovan? Could they take themselves out of the moment and just celebrate that moment, even though it's not one of their own?
It's hard. It'll be hard to do, especially when the game means so much.
Yep, exactly.
So, all right. So you pimped out the game. So now I want to ask you we started off with a 3-choice that you had. Let's wrap up with that as well. So 3 matches. I know you're looking forward to the LA-Seattle game. So that one, Chicago at New York, Sporting Kansas City at Philly. What game do you have maybe circled a few times with your pen?
Well, I'm interested to see what Chicago comes out with against New York, because New York's playing for the Supporters' Shield, and that would be the first real hardware for New York, and would almost to a certain extent break the curse, I think, for them. On the other side, Chicago with Mike McGee, who right now is it's an incredible story, the way he came over from Los Angeles and has been everything to that organization, and now is the player that you think of when you think of the Chicago Fire, and just behind DeVayo when it comes to goals, and certainly in the MVP talk. Look, New England, this is a team that I think is one of the most attractive in terms of watching them play. A lot of young players. They went all in and didn't sell Juan Agudelo in the summer to keep him here, to lose him for nothing at the end of the year when he goes over to the EPL, because they thought they had a chance of making the playoffs. Well, they did the first bit beating Columbus at home. Now they got to go to Columbus, who has nothing to play for. Will this be the moment when New England finally turns that corner and gets into the playoffs after a bunch of years of just absolute bummer type of performances?
Yeah, I agree with the New England. That's a team I talked to Taylor last week. That's a team that I think everybody who is a fan of MLS wants to see in the playoffs. And, it'd be great to see them on a national game at some point so that the rest of the country can see about these exciting young players that are going up in Boston.
It's fun. They are fun to watch. I mean, Diego Fagundes has just continued to get better and better and better, scored not just a lot of goals, but in multiple games, and a consistency. So I always talk about forwards that I like to play with, where I knew when I got on the field from a percentage perspective, they score. It's not how many goals they score, but in how many games they score. So if I walked on the field with, say, a Carlos Ruiz or something like that, I knew that we were, for the most part, probably up 1-0. So if I kept a clean sheet back there, we were going to win, because this guy was going to get a goal. Diego Fagundes, even at a young age, is proving to be that type of player. Wow. So they're fun to watch. They're not fun to watch when they play at Gillette, but with the lines and the turf and all that kind of stuff. But at least from a soccer perspective, they're doing all that they can to kind of put away the view of New England that has cropped up over the last few years, where ownership doesn't really care and the soccer's not that good. This is a good team and a good young team. So it's going to be fun to watch, not just what happens here this weekend, but going forward. And
I guess the most important storyline for this week as we head into the final season, regular season weekend, will Chivas USA be able to capitalize on their game in hand, Alexi? Will that happen?
They still playing? They still got games?
Yes, they have 2 more games. Everyone else has 1. They have 2 more.
Yeah, I mean, the Chivas USA is a whole nother conversation,
Totally.
A whole nother subject, but they're going to have to figure something out this off season, because it has been an absolutely atrocious mess on and off the field, from everything that's happened with coaching changes and the poor performance on the field to the lawsuits against the organization. And I live here in Los Angeles, and just the irrelevancy when it comes to that brand right here. And it shouldn't be like that, because it could be so much better. And I hope that something happens in the off season to put it in a position to succeed, because LA can certainly have 2 successful soccer teams here. But right now, when people think of soccer, the only team that they think about is the Galaxy.
Well, I think our biggest takeaway from our conversation, Alexi, is revisit hairbands, specifically Rat and Cinderella.
There we go. There we go.
Thank you, Alexi. I appreciate it, man.
Anytime.
Whew, we went a little long there, but I think it was worth it, especially whenever you can talk hair bands with Alexi Lalas, you've got to go long. So we thank Alexi for giving us some time. Not sure if we're going to talk much hair with our next guest. Might be a little too young for the hair band phenomenon, but he hasn't been too young to lead the biggest surging team going into MLS Cup playoffs, Portland Timbers. I'm talking about Will Johnson. By the way, did you notice my segue from... You did? Okay, good. Let's bring him in now. Midfielder Will Johnson joins Pitch Pass right now. Will, how are you, sir?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I just had a very long musical discussion with Alexi Lalas, and so I'm feeling very energized. And I guess my first question to you would be, what is your favorite '80s hair metal band? Because that's what Alexi and I just talked about.
Geez, my knowledge on those kind of things is next to nothing. I probably couldn't even name a band from the 80s and get it right. So I'm gonna have to pass on that one. That's way out of my league.
Nor should you. You were born in 1987. That was the height of the hair bands. I don't think you were really rocking out as a 1-year-old. So that makes perfect sense. Yeah. But I mean, you living in Portland now, which is the Pacific Northwest, a lot of great music in that area. What do you listen to? What does Will Johnson listen to when he's unwinding at home?
Yeah, I listen to a bit of everything. I kind of just like the radio, what's hot at the time. I've grown up with some older bands. Being from Liverpool, I like the Beatles, some of the classic stuff. I don't mind a bit of Bob Marley. The guys play all sorts of stuff. Before games, I like some of Drake's upbeat songs. I'm a mutt. I like everything.
All right, well, let me ask you this. What in the locker room, when it's turned on, do you go, oh, no?
Oh man, that's there's some stuff that when I can't understand, when the guys are rapping in English and I can't understand it, that's when I'm at the point I'm like, this is not for me. And the guys are just, or you have the one guy talking and rapping, and then you got another guy in the background just going, yeah, just kind of in that rap voice. That's just like, come on, guys, let's next song.
Now I know you just dropped you listen to the Beatles, but you dropped it in the sense of that you spent some time, you grew up a little bit in Liverpool. Is it a situation where it's a class that you have to teach when you get to school in Liverpool?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. You gotta do a little bit. And then when I played for Real Salt Lake, Paul McCartney actually came to Rio Tinto, and I was fortunate enough to actually go to that concert. So that was the closest I ever got to those guys. I'm sure it's not the same as it was back in the day, but I thoroughly enjoyed that.
And you don't get to meet Paul. Like he's off limits to everybody, right?
Oh, absolutely. He's a sir. Those guys, you got to be in that elite group of people to meet each other. They only hang out with each other.
So I'm a little jealous of you living in Portland, and I'm not sure if you're a beer drinker or not, but Portland known as one of the top beer towns, not just in the United States, but in the world. Do you partake it ever, or are you a guy that stays away in season or overall?
For the most part, in season, I stay away. I haven't got a real good chance to beer hop around Portland just yet, but in the off season, that's fair game, and it's one of the things I definitely plan to do, to get out to a few of the vineyards, test out the wineries, and then obviously go to all the pubs, the local brews, all the micro brews. I think that's really cool. Again, my knowledge is next to nothing, but my interest is sky high on that one. Well,
it's interesting you say that, because I was just reading an article that I just posted today in the Oregonian saying, how well you've settled here, and even though you've bounced around a lot and moved to a couple of different places, you immediately felt at home in Portland. So I'm guessing that now you're thinking to yourself, you're going to stay in Portland in the offseason, kind of make it your home?
Yeah, that's the plan. Obviously, we'll travel a little bit, get around, see the family. Don't have a lot of family here in Portland yet, so my wife and I will take our daughter around the country to see parents and grandparents and that kind of stuff. But yeah, we want to make it a home. I really like it here. Portland has treated us really, really well. All the people have been fantastic to me, and also to my family. So that means a lot to me, and goes a long way for us trying to potentially make this our long-term home.
You've been, I would assume, had the pleasure of playing under two of the young coaching prodigies, or the up-and-coming coaches in the league, in Jason Kreis and now Caleb Porter. Before I ask you to compare them as coaches, I will ask you to compare their wardrobe and ask you who dresses the better. Who is the better dresser?
It's close. My mother-in-law likes to have this conversation on who's the best dresser and matches their ties and all that stuff. But, that's not for me to decide.
Come on, Will.
I'll leave that to the ladies and their taste. I got great respect for both of those guys, and I think they both dress admirably.
Very well said. Now let's talk about their coaching styles. Compare them as coaches, as guys who, as Americans, I look at them as maybe future national team coaches. So they're guys I definitely want to know about moving forward. So compare Kreis and Porter as coaches.
Yeah, they're both guys that want to win. They're aggressive. They don't change their styles, to fit other teams. They're all about trying to win and take care of their guys. I think they're a little different than people think. They're both young American coaches, so people want to group them in the same category. But, Jason leans back on a lot of his playing experiences, and you can see that in his managerial style, where Caleb's a lot more tactical, using his coaching from various levels and his studying, of the game. I think from a managerial point of view, Caleb's been studying the game for a lot longer than Jason, and obviously Jason had this long, successful career in Major League Soccer, and he uses a lot of things from that aspect of his life. So I think when you compare those things, there's quite a few differences, but like I said before, with their fashion sense, I got great respect as two really knowledgeable football guys, and the bottom line is they're both very intelligent. They understand the game and how to get results, which is obviously the most important.
I appreciate how you brought a soccer question right back around to close again. That's very nice of you. Very well done, Will. Thank you. I got to ask you, you've been at the center of a couple of dust-ups on the pitch in the last month or so. When things like that happen, do you make a point after matches to seek out whoever you are kind of mixing up with? Or is it one of those things where it's like, that happened on the field or on the pitch and I'm leaving it there, and if we meet up again at some point down the road, that's fine, but I'm leaving it there?
Yeah, no, I leave it there. All the stuff that happens between the lines for me stays between the lines. I don't hold grudges with different guys. I'm a competitor. I go out there, I compete. If things happen, they happen. So be it. My experience as a professional, as far as things go after games, is that most people, when they lose, they tend to walk straight off the field, no matter what. If I'm playing at home and a visiting team comes into Gelbin and gets a point, I'll get a lot more handshakes and good luck the rest of the season. And if they beat you, then of course, we're not immune to it too. We usually try and get out of there pretty quick. It's not a fun moment when you lose points like that. So I think the experiences that I've had, between guys and sportsmanship and even shaking the hands of referees, most of it depends on the result of the match.
Well, how about as it pertains to guys that and specifically have played with? And I'm thinking about your last match against Real Salt Lake. Do you go up to Nick after the match and go, "Hey man, what's up with standing on your head? We're trying to get points here."
Yeah, I saw a few of the guys, but a few of them got off the pitch quick, and I said hello. But that stuff's more for the off season and things like that, when you get a chance to catch up with certain guys. I think out of respect for your fans and your fan base, you don't want to fraternize yourself with their opponents in front of your fans. It can come off the wrong way. I think everybody in the league is the utmost professional and very competitive and obviously want to win. But I think when Timbers Army member, and they spend a lot of good, hard-earned money to come out and watch the Timbers play. They want to see us sticking together and making a go at winning every single game.
I always think about that when I see, because one of the great things about soccer is the jersey swap that happens occasionally after matches. And I always think that's really cool. But then I think to myself, the guy that throws on the jersey, and then you see them pictures and afterwards, and it's like everybody's wearing a jersey of the team, except for one guy who's wearing the other team's jersey. It always strikes me as kind of a little bit funny.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird, but I do like it. It's a cool tradition when guys get to trade shirts, and some guys are hardcore collectors of jerseys from all around the world and different players, and some guys could care less. It's just a unique aspect, and I think it's definitely a good thing. But like I said, after a high octane game, you don't see two guys who have been button heads the whole time usually trade jerseys. It's usually old friends who have played on different teams and got it sorted from there.
Do you have anybody's jersey?
Not really. A few guys that I've traded with. I actually traded with Chris Schuler after the Salt Lake game. We've known each other growing up in Chicago for the better part of a decade there. So he's a kid he's a year younger than me. So we we've known each other for years and years, and yeah, he was the jersey that I got after the Salt Lake game, so that's cool.
I have to ask you, and I talked to Darlington Nagbe earlier in the season, and I forgot to ask him. And I know this is a cliche question for Timber players, but what do you do with the slabs?
Well, not much. I mean, I had all these plans, when I came here to get a few of these logs and do all this cool stuff with them. But it's such a fresh piece of wood that it splits and cracks because when it dries out pretty soon after. So you literally have to take the thing home and bind it and varnish it and stuff. And this is another area that I'm not very knowledgeable in, obviously, because I came in after I got my first goal and I was going to bring it home and make a coffee table or do something cool out of it. By the time I got to it, it looked like Pac-Man. It had a big slit out of one of the sides.
That's not very Pacific Northwest of you, Will. I don't know what to do with this tree. I don't know what to do with it.
No, it's I got to figure something else, but I got to be more prepared in the future as well.
Well, one of the things I took away from your answer was when you found out you were traded to Portland, one of your first reaction was, "Sweet, I might get one of those pieces of slabs of tree. I love it, some lumber."
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's a great tradition. I think the fans love it. I think it's unique to Portland, and it's a fun little thing that they do. I think it's really cool.
I wouldn't even have thought about what to do afterwards, and the varnishing thing sounds like a great move if you had remembered to do that. The thing I would immediately thought about is, God, I got to lug this thing and I can put it in my car. It's gonna shed all over my back seat or in my trunk.
Yeah. Well, the other thing to think about at Geldman as well is you've got to get that log slice, which isn't exactly featherweight. It's quite a piece of wood, and you got to get it all the way up all those stairs and across the street and into your car. You're probably walking 300, 400, 500 yards, and a lot of that's straight up a bunch of stairs. So it's not the easiest thing, but I got to be more prepared. You're
doing a CrossFit workout. You're doing overhead squats with a 45-pound weight over your head.
That's right. That's what you got to do with it.
I have to think to myself, and I'm sure it's all the ins and outs specifically, but going into this weekend, how confused are you by all the different scenarios that could happen?
Well, to be honest, I haven't looked at a whole lot of them. We got to focus on our business. The only thing that we can control is the result against Chivas in Los Angeles. That's the only thing we can control. All the rest, all the other games that happens, we'll look at that on Sunday night and we'll see where we end up. And that's how it goes, But if you start trying to look at all these scenarios, you drive yourself crazy. And for me, I don't really see any positives that come out of it. I mean, unless you're trying to get a certain matchup, I don't think so. Our only goal is trying to win the Western, trying to get the first seed in the West.
Well, yeah, and Supporters Shield, and I talked about this with Taylor Twellman, how awesome it would be to have an MLS Cup at Geldwin. That would be awesome. And obviously that's a goal for you guys to lock down the Supporters Shield if you can do that.
Yeah, for sure. But there's so many things we want to do. But, first and foremost, we've got to get high as seed as possible against Chivas. And then you got to win conference semifinals, conference finals. There's so many things that can happen before you get to MLS Cup. So we're not even thinking about that now. We're just taking it one game at a time. And that's been our philosophy all season long. And it's worked out okay for us so far.
Sweet cliche, Will. Way to drop that one game at a time. I like that. If you had your way, though, and I know you like soccer and you're watching the soccer, would you prefer to have all these matches take place in like a 3 or 4 hour window rather than now we know RSL won against Chivas, so now we have to catch them, and then LA is going to play, and then we're going to play, and then New York plays after us. Would you prefer to happen all at one time?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that's. At some point in the future, you got to do that. But obviously, logistically, everybody says logistically it's very difficult to do across all the time zones. I think that's an excuse to be honest with you. I think it could be done. You start the games at 5 o'clock on the East Coast and 8 o'clock on the West Coast. I don't see what the big deal is with all that. But then again, I'm not privy to those long meetings that people who make the schedule. They have to do all that stuff. And the other thing is obviously that there's an odd amount of teams right now, so somebody wouldn't be able to play. But once you get in the near future, hopefully there's got to be some way that you can figure it out. But I understand why they don't do it right now.
We started the show with Alexi talking about my favorite European team, which is Ajax, and that would be a great way to finish. I talked to Darlington Nagbe earlier, as I told you. I love the Rose City strip that you guys wear because it reminds me of Ajax. When you first saw it, did you go, "Oh, ouch"? As somebody who's played in the Netherlands, was that a little bit funky to have to see that?
Yeah, I mean, but it's still a unique. There's enough changes where you don't think right away that it's an Ajax jersey. You know, obviously you can see it's modeled after it. But I have great respect for Ajax. I mean, I played in the arena multiple times against all their best players and had a blast. The fans are fantastic there. The stadium is so cool. The architecture in that place is just unbelievable. So anything that is mentioned in the same sentence as Ajax, I think that's a good thing.
And I know you are totally subjective on this, and I know the answer is probably gelled win, but can you tell me a little bit about the Amsterdam Arena atmosphere as just a guy who's played on the pitch there to a guy who loves that team? What's it like? What's the atmosphere like in the arena?
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, you have the fans that go all the way around. So the whole stadium, there's not one end that's more populated than the other end. The whole thing is a double ring. The fans are a little bit farther away from the field than they are at Geldwin, so that's not as good. But when they pack it, which they don't for every game, but for a good Champions League game, when they pack that thing, it is so loud, and it's cool. It just goes up and up. And the fans are very passionate as well. So it's a cool place to play. It's definitely something I look back on with fond memories.
Thank you for indulging me, Will. I appreciate you talking about Ajax with me. And
cool.
I'm definitely looking forward to you guys in the playoffs. You've clinched the playoff berth for sure this weekend against Chivas USA, going for the Supporters Shield. And best of luck to you, my friend, and the rest of the Portland Timbers.
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on. It's fun talking with you.
For more show information, go to pitchpass.com.